Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukhaswarupaya Swamine Tapaharini. 25th January of this year is the 160th birthday of Swami Vivekananda. So it will be very befitting to start meditating, remembering his life and teachings as the followers of Swami Vivekananda from now itself, so that we can go into the deep reverence and devotion to Swami Vivekananda on the very birthday of his, which will be coming in the ensuing days. We all know about the life and teachings of Swami Vivekananda. There is nothing much to elaborate on it, as the devotees of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and also the followers of Swami Vivekananda's life and teachings. Swami Vivekananda lived what he taught and taught what he lived. He was a greatest ideal for the spiritualism. Not only he practiced and he realized the highest in the realm of the spiritualism under his Guru Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, but also try to bring these ideas of spiritualism to the good of human race. So all throughout his life, very short life of 40 years, he labored to rise all the human beings to this ideal of spiritualism. So he wanted to convert every breath, every motion of the limbs of the human being, every activity to the spiritual practice. So that is why he preached practical Vedanta to this world. For he found out the Upanishads gave the highest expression of the essence of this human life. So the Vedanta, the Upanishads, which were living in the forest, which were inside the caves of the Himalayas, he brought down to this world to the good of everyone. So he gave the idea of practicing the highest knowledge of the Upanishads while performing the duties and while governing our own organization and institutions, and to be an inspiration to the motive and activity of all our life. Secondly, Swami Vivekananda did not exclude anyone. He included everyone, whether the people belonging to his own natives, belonging to other part of the nation like Madras, the South Indians, and when he went to the West, he embraced each and everyone, whether they are Americans, whether they are British, whether they are from the Ireland, anywhere and everywhere, he included the people and brought them towards the greatest ideal of the Vedanta. And he wanted to give the opportunity to all, and he would declare that the life is a large institution, a sort of gymnasium on which we are all taking exercises, and after finishing these exercises, we become one with God. So for him, the ideal of the life is to practice the divinity when we are alive, and when we leave the body, merging with the Supreme God once for all. So as he would declare this life is a vast institution, he also practiced this kind of life and institutionalized the spiritualism, which does not exclude anything, whether it is work, whether it is yoga, or whether it is the practice of the devotion. Everything comes in the ambit of the spiritual practice for him, and that's what he preached and that is what he practiced. We all know that Swami Vivekananda was born in Calcutta on Monday, 12th January 1863, and he is one of the greatest prophets the world has ever produced. And he has left a rich legacy of the spectacular achievements in the religious and cultural history of the world. He is a man of versatile genius, many-faceted personality, and we can find in him the heart of Buddha and the intellect of Shankara together. He lived the life of the great Saptarshis. He lived the life of the great saints. He lived the life of the great devotees like Ramakrishna. And also he lived the life of the great scholars like Shankara, Ramanuja and Madhva. Not only that, he had the love of Chaitanya, the burning renunciation like Jesus Christ, and the dynamism of St. Paul, who established the churches for Jesus Christ. So also Swami Vivekananda established this church for Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. The main message of Swami Vivekananda we see is the fearlessness in all aspects of life. This fearlessness is disseminating his message to the mankind regardless of caste, creed, color and nationality. Vivekananda was comprehensive in his vision, and he was remarkably universal to the very core of his luminous being. Behind his universal outlook, he was a great person of spiritual realization, and he found out the reality between the existence of this world. That reality is nothing but Atman, which is ever pure, immortal, blissful and all-pervading. So Atman is distinct from all this mundane activity, but yet it is immanent in this world. So this is the truth which he made it practical by applying to the service of the human beings. If everything is the manifestation of the God, why not the human beings? So he brought the idea of service to the humanity at the highest level of the Vedanta, so that people can practice the presence of Atman in each and every living creature. So he used to tell that this Atman is your own nature. Assert it, manifest it. Nature is like that screen which is holding the reality of beyond. Every good thought you think or act upon is simply tearing of that veil, as it were, and purity, infinity, the God behind manifests itself more and more. So that is what we see in the Advaita Vedanta. What is called the Maya is nothing but the veil that is put on the reality. So when this veil is removed, when this cover is removed, the light of the Atman blazes out like a fire. So he fanned that blazing fire of the knowledge of the self to the highest flame, and it engulfed the whole humanity and removed all sorts of ignorance, burned all sorts of weaknesses. So this tiny human being which we see was to him was the divinity itself. So he manifested the divinity in himself and made the people to manifest the individual divinity in their own individual life. So this faith in our innate divine nature is the essential message of Swami Vivekananda. That's what we can say. Essential prerequisite for any healthy universe. That was what Swamiji wanted to make. He wanted to make the people healthy, and he wanted to make the people, the universe healthy and blissful for all the human beings that are living here. So Swamiji used to say this infinite power of spirit brought to bear upon the matter evolves material development, made to act upon the thought, evolves intellectuality, and made to act upon itself makes a man God. Be and make, let this be our motto. Say not man is a sinner, tell him that he is God. So his great mission was to rouse in all people the awareness of the ever-present focus of human dignity, that is nothing but Atman, that human being is the divine spark living on the earth, and to help to manifest each and every being the glory of this Atman in every moment of their life. So he was the prophet of gospel of man-making. He saw the divine self in every person and looked upon human form as the temple of God. This transcendental experience of the spiritual unity of life made him really universal. It is absolutely different in character from so-called universalism based on humanism, as these idealists never recognized the spiritual dimension of life. So the difference between Swami Vivekananda and the earlier prophet is that bringing these ideals of the greatest, highest spiritual experiences to the common masses. So that is why he could make so many people as the renunciants, the sannyasins. Usually we see in our Indian type of monasticism, there will be one or two sannyasins and there will be lakhs and crores of followers for a few mutts or the few monasteries. But he found out that this renunciation, the idea of renunciation, can be practiced by the people of all caste and religion. So that is why Ramakrishna Math and Mission could produce so many sannyasins who are following the highest ideal of the olden days, and yet they are serving the humanity. That is one of the greatest message and contributions of Swami Vivekananda, which is very unique to him, to this modern world. So the aims and aspirations of life are to experience the spiritual excellences of the divine through the self-culture. This demands growth, maturity, and a higher evolution, certainly not the stagnation produced by impulsively seeking only material satisfaction. Swamiji gave stern warnings about the evil consequences of the rampant materialism seeking power without spiritual maturity. In this modern world, where there is a science and technological progress is so fast that the people of the world can get the materials which are required for the sensual pleasures very easily. In those days, we could see hardly a few ambassador cars running on the roads, but today we see there is no place for parking on the road, and the signals will be filled with the traffic blocks because the people can easily buy cars. So this is an example of the luxury entering into to the common people. And when the people go behind these luxuries, when they go behind the pleasures of the senses, the whole civilization fall down. The humanity falls down. This is not the kind of progress Swami Vivekananda wanted. That's why Swamiji knew the evil consequences of this kind of rampant materialism, and that is why he preached spirituality, renunciation, the practices of sacrificing one's own pleasures for the good of others, so that people will forget the pleasures of the self, go beyond the self and seek the God. So, he did not want the modern people to get degenerated by this materialism, and that is why he showed the highest path of the spirit, which brings out the divinity and removes the animal nature of the individuals. That's what he wanted to preach, because today we see people have so much of knowledge. They study a lot, they undergo the secular education, they get a lot of excess knowledge, but the knowledge without the power of holiness is of no use. That's what Swamiji says here. The excess of knowledge and power without holiness makes human being devils. Mary Louise Burke writes, "The West, horrified by the destructive power of the nuclear forces, is nearly corroborating the teachings of Swami Vivekananda, in that a man with excess of knowledge and power without holiness is a devil. He was essentially and primarily a great spiritual teacher of mankind. He was eternally perfect sage, commissioned by Sri Ramakrishna to teach and serve humanity. The stupendous spiritual power stemming from his illumined life was immediate impact on his vast audience." This is what Swamiji taught to the West, and this is relevant for the East also today, because we are also undergoing the kind of westernization in the name of prosperity. So Swami Vivekananda, while teaching that the religion is not for the empty stomach, we have to acquire the wealth, we have to acquire the pride in our the nation, and we have to become economically forward. With all that, Swamiji was aware the consequences of the materialism. That is why he was preaching the renunciation side by side. Burning renunciation was the chief of all the inspiration that he spoke through his words. Once he said to one of his audiences that, "Let me die like a true sannyasin as my master did." This he exclaimed very passionately, heedless of money, of women and fame, and of these most insidious is the love of fame. So, in spite of gaining so much of fame in West as well as in India, he was very much conscious of the consequences of the kirti, that what we call the fame is nothing but the kirti. This hankering for the fame and to make the name in this world is also a greatest hurdle to the spirituality. So he was untouched by all the glories that was brought by his famous speech in the Parliament of Religion, and also his further lectures in America. It brought the dignity to the India. So he sacrificed all his name and fame for the good of India. And Swami Vivekananda's main teaching that we see is the teachings of the strength. So he infused this idea of strength in the whole of his teachings, so that whoever touches this his words will not go without receiving a sort of electrical shock. That's what Romarola wrote in his biography in 1928. "I cannot touch these sayings of his, scattered as they are, through the pages of this book, that means he is referring to the complete works, at 30 years distance, without receiving a thrill through my body like an electric shock. And what shock, what transport must have been produced when in burning words they issued from the lips of the hero. So his words are full of strength, full of vigor, which gives us the courage to march on in our life without fearlessness and weaknesses. So Swami Vivekananda touched the human life at many points in a redeeming manner. He was undoubtedly a greatest service in the sphere of religion and the mankind is his message of strength. So, which was the message of strength that Abhihi Abhihi were brewed in the caves of Himalayas in those early days, and he brought this and he poured out from the ocean to the oceans of all the 7 oceans of the world, so that the people can drink this nectar of strength. So he made the religion attractive. All those days, religion was only confined to the few people, and people who were practicing the religion were not invigorated. There was no strength, it was insipid practices like Sandhyavanandana, etc., doing it for the sake of doing. But Swami Vivekananda brought some vigor into the practice of religion. He made the practice of religion as interesting. So today we can see there are more people in all the religions practicing their individual religion, whether it is Christianity, whether it is Islam, whether it is Hinduism. Many people are coming forward. They found out there is something interesting. There is something which is benefiting their individual life, and he made this religion as attractive commodity, explaining the real essence of the religion, the practice of the religion. And the important thing is, he infused the strength that you can gain the strength by practicing the religion. You can gain something in this world by practicing the religion. You can master something by practicing the religion. So that is why when he taught yoga, so many people, he was the first preacher of Raja Yoga to the West. So many people were drawn to the practices of yoga. Today, the yoga is flourishing in the whole world, and the credit goes to Swami Vivekananda. He vitalized the religion by calling for a scientific scrutiny of all religious phenomena. We all know how in his life Swamiji tested his own master in various ways, and he confirmed he had that scientific temper because of his Western kind of education which he was undergoing in his colleges. So he was an example of the youths of today, that people can accumulate the education, have this scientific temper. This scientific temper can be applied to the religion also. You test. Buddha also used to tell to his disciples to test him. Just like how the goldsmith tests the gold before taking it back from anybody, so also Buddha says you can test me by throwing into just like goldsmith throws the ornaments to the fire and checks whether the gold is pure or not. Similarly, Swami Vivekananda challenged these people of scientific temper to test the religion, verify the religion, and then accept the religion as true. So he galvanized the religion for the benefit of this world, and he changed the entire outlook towards the practitioners of the religion. So he used this idea of the practice of religion for the physical and mental strength. So to him, this spiritual practice is not just for the sake of the emancipation, it is also for the sake of the good of the civilization, good of the individual, physical, mental, moral, and intellectual development. So he used to say constantly, yield not to weakness. This is the essence of the Gita, according to Swami Vivekananda. We know how he preached that you will be nearer to heaven by playing football than studying Gita. So for him, we have to develop the strength in all the aspects of the human being. Swamiji amplified and ennobled the idea of religion by pointing out how all the activities of life could be made a sacrifice at the altar of God. The dividing wall between secularism and spirituality has to be broken. Life is a preparation, a journey, a struggle for inner illumination. From this point of view itself, the life becomes tapasya. An active and sincere endeavor by means of all our activities to bring about the inflow of the divine urge, a constant equipping of the will and mind for the advent of the light and the life of God. So Swami Vivekananda's quintessence of the Vedas and Vedanta for Vivekananda is that one word, abhihi, abhihi. Strength is the only thing that is needful. Swamiji used to say, strength is the medicine for the world's disease. Strength is the medicine which the poor must have when tyrannized over by the rich. Strength is the medicine which the ignorant must have when oppressed by the learned. And strength is the medicine which the sinners must have when tyrannized over by the other sinners. So we must not forget Swamiji was the soul of might encased in an energetic and short-lived body. He worked all his strength with the divine strength of the mother, which the divine mother gave him in Dakshineshwar through Sri Ramakrishna. So he was sort of reasserting the Upanishad message, Nayamatma balahineno labhya. The self cannot be attained through the weak people. The people must have strength, then only they can realize God. Swamiji, he himself used to express how much thrilled he was by practicing this and realizing the divinity. He had many times experienced this Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And Swamiji once said in his letters, by practicing the highest Samadhi, what happens? See, in his letter he is telling, many times I have been in the jaws of death, starving, footsore and weary. For days and days I had no food and often could walk no farther. I would sink down under a tree and life would seem to be ebbing away. I could not speak, I could scarcely think, but at last the mind reverted to the idea, I have no fear nor death. The whole nature cannot crush me. It is my servant and I would rise up reinvigorated, and here I am living today. That's how he wandered in the fields and forests of India for 6 years. So he brought the strength of the Upanishads, love and compassion of Buddha together. Swami Vivekananda was like Buddha in a subtle form. He was an Upanishadic saint with the love, the heart of Buddha. So he's not only realized Buddha, he had the vision of Buddha, but he combined the Buddhism and Hinduism to give the highest knowledge as well as the compassion that Buddha showed to all people. So we cannot find in any personality the combination of the compassion and strength as much as we find in the life of Swami Vivekananda. Let us remember him forever so that we gain necessary strength to realize our own self and to serve the humanity for the good of our own self. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.